Daniel's life was not extraordinary. In fact, it was painfully ordinary, almost to the point of invisibility. Each morning he woke before his alarm clock, not out of eagerness for the day ahead, but because of a restless body conditioned to routine. His curtains, pale beige and slightly frayed at the edges, let in a dim stream of sunlight that painted the same tired shadows across his walls. The silence in his apartment was heavy. There was no music, no laughter, no gentle background of a family waking up, only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of the clock. He moved through his kitchen mechanically, pouring the same bitter coffee, chewing the same bland toast, and staring absently at the same cracked mug that had been his companion for years. Daniel was 34, but in his own mind, he felt much older. His job at a small corporate office was less a career and more a cage. The fluorescent lights above his desk buzzed faintly, their cold glow draining all color from his skin. His computer screen reflected spreadsheets and emails that blurred into meaninglessness. He smiled politely when required, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and nodded through endless meetings. But inside, he was suffocating. Sometimes he would catch his reflection in the polished glass of the office building. What he saw unsettled him. Tired eyes that looked like they belonged to a stranger, slouched shoulders that seemed weighed down by invisible chains, and an expression that said, "This is not the life I wanted." At night, when the city outside softened into darkness, Daniel would lie awake staring at the ceiling. Questions tormented him. Is this it? Is this all I was meant for? Work, pay bills, grow old, and vanish? He remembered childhood dreams of adventure, of creation, of doing something meaningful. But those dreams felt like they belonged to another lifetime. And then, one night, something happened that would change everything. It began in the most ordinary way. Restless and unable to sleep, Daniel scrolled through his phone. Endless videos, meaningless posts, recycled advice. Until suddenly, one sentence froze him in place. You don't need to change the world. You only need to change the program. Running inside your mind. Daniel blinked. The words were simple, almost too simple, but they struck him like lightning. He read them again. The program running inside your mind. He clicked the link that followed. It led to an article on the subconscious. It described how 95% of our thoughts, habits, and behaviors are not chosen consciously, but controlled by hidden patterns buried deep beneath awareness. It compared the mind to an iceberg, the conscious tip visible above the water and the massive subconscious hidden below, silently steering the ship of life. Daniel leaned back, heart pounding. Could this be true? Was he not broken, not destined to misery, but simply programmed? Could the cage he lived in be made not of steel but of thought? The article described a 30-day method, simple daily practices of silence, affirmations, and visualization designed to rewrite the subconscious. Daniel almost laughed out loud. 30 days? My entire life has been the same for decades. How could 30 days undo 30 years? And yet, a seed had been planted. The next night, curiosity overcame skepticism. Daniel decided to try. He turned off the lights, sat on the couch, and closed his eyes. His heart raced. His breathing was shallow. He repeated the phrase he had written on a scrap of paper. I am free. I am capable. I am becoming the man I was meant to be. His conscious mind ridiculed him. You, free, you're stuck, you're nobody. But he continued. The first days were awkward. His thoughts wandered. Doubts grew louder. He felt foolish, like a child pretending. But something subtle began to shift. By the end of the first week, he noticed small changes. Traffic that once made him curse now only made him sigh. When a colleague insulted him, he felt irritation, but not rage. In the mornings he woke not with despair, but with a faint spark of energy, and then came the dreams. Vivid, colorful, strange dreams. A forest filled with shadows, a locked door he couldn't open, a child's laughter echoing through the dark. He didn't understand them, but he woke with a sense of meaning, as if the subconscious, silent for so long, was finally answering back. By the 12th day, resistance struck. After a heated argument with his boss, Daniel slammed his notebook down and muttered, "Nothing's working. I'm wasting my time." That night, exhausted, he nearly skipped the ritual, but something deep inside whispered, "Continue," and so he did. With clenched teeth and trembling hands, he sat in silence, repeated his phrases, and pushed through the storm. That night, he understood. The mind was like a garden. If you don't plant seeds deliberately, weeds grow on their own. From that day forward, the shift accelerated. By the 3rd week, Daniel was unrecognizable. His colleagues asked if he had started a new diet or joined a yoga class. His neighbors noticed he smiled more. The truth was invisible to them. Daniel had begun to reprogram the unseen. He kept a journal, filling pages with new thoughts and dreams. One entry read, "I feel as though a part of me is dying and another is being born." On the 21st day, during a visualization, he experienced something extraordinary. He saw himself standing on a mountain at sunrise, the sky painted in gold and crimson. He felt the wind, smelled the fresh air, and in that moment it felt more real than the office he had left behind. It wasn't fantasy. It was his subconscious creating a blueprint of his future self. By the final week, Daniel had transformed. He spoke with confidence. He volunteered for projects. Strangers seemed drawn to him, and inside he felt aligned, as if the universe itself was responding to his new program. On the 30th day, the truth struck him with clarity. His circumstances had not drastically changed. The city, the job, the people were the same. But everything looked different because he was different. The subconscious that once imprisoned him was now his greatest ally. The chains were gone, and so I ask you, how many times have you tried to change your life only to return to the same patterns? How many times have you felt invisible chains dragging you back? Perhaps the problem was never you. Perhaps it was only the program inside your subconscious. Imagine 30 days from now, waking up lighter, freer, filled with energy, seeing opportunities where before there were only walls, feeling creativity, confidence, and clarity rise naturally from within. This is not fantasy. This is the power of reprogramming your subconscious, and today, you don't have to do it alone. Modern methods exist to accelerate this process. One of them is called the Genius Wave. It is designed to work with specific mental frequencies that speak directly to the subconscious. Like a key unlocking doors you never knew existed, just minutes a day. Yet those minutes can reshape years of your future. Daniel's story is proof change is possible. The question now is, are you ready to begin your own 30 days? Daniel's transformation during the first 30 days had been nothing short of miraculous. For the first time in his adult life, he felt alive, lighter, and free from the invisible chains that had bound him for decades. But what he didn't realize yet was that the journey had only begun, because reprogramming the subconscious is not just about breaking old patterns, it's about unlocking an entire hidden world. A language of symbols, emotions, and memories buried deep inside the mind. It all began on the 31st night. Daniel sat in silence, continuing his evening ritual. But this time, something different happened. When he closed his eyes and repeated his affirmations, his mind didn't wander the way it used to. Instead, images flooded in, shapes, colors, and places that felt both strange and familiar. He saw a vast library, endless rows of books stretching into darkness. He felt himself walking through it, fingertips brushing the spines of volumes that seemed to hum with energy. One book, glowing faintly, caught his attention. When he opened it, there were no words, only a mirror. And in that mirror, Daniel saw not his present self, but a younger boy, 10 years old, eyes wide, filled with wonder. He woke with tears on his face. It was only a dream, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it was more. The subconscious, he realized, was speaking to him in its own language, and he needed to learn how to listen. Over the following week, the dreams grew stronger. Each night brought symbols that carried weight, though their meanings were not immediately clear. A locked door, a golden key, a river that flowed both upstream and downstream. He began researching neuroscience, psychology, even ancient spiritual traditions. He learned that the subconscious communicates through imagery, metaphors, and sensations, not logic. Dreams, slips of the tongue, sudden emotions. These were all windows into the hidden programming beneath awareness. One phrase stood out to him: the subconscious is a child. It does not argue, it obeys. Daniel realized that all his life he had been feeding this child negative commands. You're not good enough. You can't change. You'll always fail. And like an obedient child, the subconscious had listened. But now he was feeding it new words, new images. And the child was beginning to grow into something stronger. On the 36th day, Daniel had an encounter that shook him deeply. He met an old friend for coffee, someone he hadn't seen in years. The friend asked casually, "So, how's life?" Daniel paused. For the first time in forever, he didn't answer with the usual sigh or complaint. Instead, he smiled and said, "It's changing." His friend raised an eyebrow. "You look different. Happier. What's your secret?" Daniel almost laughed. How could he explain the invisible revolution happening inside him? How could he describe the quiet hours of sitting in silence, the strange dreams, the affirmations? That seemed silly at first, but now carried power. He only said, "I'm learning to reprogram my mind." His friend chuckled, dismissing it as another self-help fad. But Daniel knew better. This wasn't theory. This was experience. That night, Daniel reflected on the encounter. He realized how much he had changed, not only in how he felt, but in how he saw the world. Problems that once seemed overwhelming now appeared as puzzles to solve. Opportunities that once slipped by, unnoticed, now shone brightly before him. He remembered something he had read. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It was true. The outer world hadn't magically transformed. His boss was still demanding. Bills still arrived. The city was still noisy. But Daniel himself had changed. And because of that, reality itself seemed different. As days turned into weeks, Daniel noticed something else. Synchronicities. Small coincidences that felt too perfect to ignore. One morning, he thought about needing a new opportunity at work. That same day, his manager mentioned an upcoming project that required leadership. Another time, he dreamed of water, and the next day a stranger at a cafe struck up a conversation about a lake retreat. Were these accidents? Or was his subconscious aligning him with new possibilities? He remembered the mountain dream from weeks before, the one where he had stood at sunrise with open arms. Perhaps that vision wasn't just a dream. Perhaps it was a roadmap. On the 40th day, something remarkable happened. During his evening ritual, as he repeated his affirmations, Daniel suddenly felt an overwhelming wave of emotion. It wasn't joy or sadness, but something deeper, a release. Tears streamed down his face, and he saw flashes of memories, moments of failure, rejection, humiliation. Times when he had told himself he was worthless, but instead of drowning in the pain, Daniel felt something shift. He whispered through his tears, "I forgive you. You were only doing the best you could." In that moment, the subconscious child within him was healed. By the end of the second month, Daniel realized he had unlocked a second level of transformation. The first 30 days had freed him from the prison of old habits, but the next 30 days revealed the treasures hidden in the subconscious, the language of dreams, the healing of memories, the alignment of inner and outer worlds. And yet, he knew this was still only the beginning, because the mind is infinite. And the deeper you go, the more you realize there is always another layer. So now, Daniel asks himself, and perhaps you should too, if this much can change in 60 days, what might happen in 90, in a year, in a lifetime? The subconscious is not a cage, it is a universe. And the more you explore it, the more you discover that the limits you once believed in were never real. And if you, listening now, wonder how to take your first steps, remember, you don't need years of meditation or endless struggle. Tools exist today that can accelerate the process, guiding your subconscious gently, effectively, directly. One of them is called the Genius Wave, a program designed not to fight the mind, but to harmonize with it, to use the very frequencies that speak the language of the subconscious. For Daniel, the journey began with doubt, resistance, and fear. But with persistence, he uncovered a power that was always there. Perhaps tonight, you can begin the same. Daniel had already walked 60 days on the path of reprogramming his subconscious. The first month had shattered his chains of limitation. The second had revealed the hidden language of dreams and symbols. But what awaited him in the third month was even more profound, because now Daniel was no longer just healing, he was creating. It began with small things. One morning, Daniel wrote in his journal, "I want to find joy in my work." Later that same week, his manager invited him to join a new project, one that perfectly matched his talents, something he had secretly longed for. Another day, he repeated the affirmation, "I am surrounded by supportive people." And almost magically, an old colleague reached out, offering encouragement and a collaboration opportunity. Coincidence or creation? Daniel remembered something he had once dismissed as nonsense. What you focus on expands. Now he understood. The subconscious mind was not just a storage of memories. It was a projector, casting images onto the screen of reality. And by changing the real, he was changing the movie of his life. But the most powerful moment came on the 75th night. Daniel had a dream. He stood before a blank canvas. In his hand was a brush, dripping with radiant light instead of paint. At first, he hesitated. What was he supposed to paint? The canvas was so empty, so intimidating. Then, a voice whispered, not outside, but inside, "You are the artist of your life." He lifted the brush and began to paint. Colors swirled, forming shapes, landscapes, entire worlds. He painted himself smiling, standing tall, surrounded by love, abundance, peace. And as he painted, he realized the images were not just staying on the canvas. They were becoming real. He woke up trembling, but this time not with fear, with awe. From that day forward, Daniel approached life differently. Instead of waiting for circumstances to change, he imagined what he wanted with vivid detail. He pictured success, happiness, health, not as distant wishes, but as present realities. He saw them, felt them, believed them, and slowly the outer world began to match the inner vision. Bills that once terrified him were paid with surprising ease, as new income flowed from unexpected places. Relationships that once felt heavy began to heal, as he radiated a new energy of compassion. Even his posture changed. His shoulders, once slumped, now stood strong, but with power came responsibility. One evening, Daniel reflected, "If I can create abundance, I can also create fear. If I can manifest joy, I can also manifest pain. My thoughts are seeds. What am I planting?" He realized the truth. The subconscious does not judge. It simply accepts the images and emotions we feed it. Like fertile soil, it grows whatever is, planted, whether weeds or flowers. That was the moment Daniel made a vow. From now on, I choose my seeds carefully. On the 90th day, the transformation was undeniable. Daniel was no longer the man who had started this journey. He had stepped into a new identity, a creator, not a victim. When he looked in the mirror, he no longer saw the tired, hopeless face he once knew. He saw clarity, strength, and purpose, and he knew this was not the end, but the beginning. Because once you realize that your subconscious is not a prison but a palette, you understand that your life is not written in stone. It is painted in light. And so Daniel asks you now, what canvas are you painting? What images are you feeding into your subconscious projector? Because whether you realize it or not, your mind is always creating. Every thought, every feeling, every belief, it's shaping your tomorrow. The question is not, does it work? The question is, are you using it consciously? If you are ready to step into this creative power, to align your subconscious with your highest vision, you don't need to wait 90 days. There are tools designed to accelerate the process, to speak directly in the language of the subconscious. One of them is the Genius Wave, a method that harmonizes your brain frequencies, guiding your mind effortlessly into the state of creation, manifestation, and clarity. For Daniel, it was a journey of 90 days. For you, it could begin tonight. The subconscious is not your enemy. It is your greatest ally. It is not your cage. It is your canvas. And you, yes, you are the artist.